Hi everyone and welcome to today's video on basics of Snapchat marketing full course by Simplilearn. If you think Snapchat is just for fun filters and quick snap, think again. It's a powerful marketing tool that businesses and creators are using to connect with younger audiences in a fresh, engaging way. So in this video, we'll start with understanding Snapchat, exploring how the platform works and why it's a great space for brands. Then we'll guide you through getting started with Snapchat, from setting up an account to optimizing your profile for marketing. We'll also dive into marketing with Snapchat, covering strategies to boost engagement, grow your audience, and create content that stands out. And finally, we'll look into Snapchat advertising and partnership, showing you how to leverage paid ads and collaborations to expand your search and drive real results. So whether you're a marketer, business owner, or influencer looking to tap into Snapchat's potential, this video will give you a solid foundation to get started. So let's dive in. But before we get started, if you're interested to start a career in digital marketing, check out Simplilearn's postgraduate program in digital marketing in partnership with Purdue University. This course provides a robust and industry-relevant curriculum to help you become a certified digital marketing expert. The program covers essential digital marketing components like website creation, SEO, SEM, social media marketing, mobile marketing, and many more. A year of experience is preferred, so hurry up and enroll now and find the course link in the description box below and in the pinned comments. So let's get started.
This is Snapchat marketing, and the first lesson is understanding Snapchat. After watching this video, you should be prepared to explain the overwhelming user base of Snapchat and the types of businesses that find it most appealing, to examine your business's primary target audiences for potential Snapchat compatibility, and to outline potential limitations of Snapchat marketing. When it comes to thinking about which social media channels you might want to incorporate as part of your marketing efforts, one of the main things we need to look for is when a channel has reached what we would call the point of viability. Basically, the point in time when there's enough of an active user base to say this is more than just a small, tiny little, third level social media channel, and it's become something that overall would make sense for a larger portion of companies to look at. And that's kind of what we've seen Snapchat reach, is they've established themselves not necessarily as a top tier social media channel like a Facebook or like a YouTube, but they're solidly entrenched as a second tier social media channel, which would put them in with, say, Pinterest and LinkedIn as the type of channel that has a good amount of people using it, but doesn't really cover across the board every single individual person. So basically what that means to you is that, well, it's worth exploring, and it's certainly reached a point that you need to understand what it is and why it works and how it might impact your business. You also have to recognize that there's simply the possibility that it might not be suitable to your business. In fact, at this stage of the game, there's probably going to be more companies that are going to say it's not necessarily worth the extra resources than companies who say this is someplace that we absolutely must be. But for certain types of audiences and for certain types of businesses, Snapchat has reached the point where it opens the door to a lot of possibilities. Now, with over 200 million active users each month, Snapchat has definitely crossed that threshold to become a channel worth understanding and considering. But it's important to understand some things about the user base of Snapchat. Now, whereas most social media channels these days have grown to include a wide range of ages into the mix, Snapchat is still one that is primarily dominated by millennials, and actually also the even younger crowd. It tends to be 13-year-olds to 29-year-olds are the most dominant population and the highest usage rate on this site. And basically with Snapchat, you can kind of think of it as sort of a less filtered stream of consciousness social sharing network. So whereas what people put on Instagram, they may think about a little more carefully and pose the picture, just right, make sure everything's perfect. And what they put on Facebook might be sort of what they've deemed acceptable for everybody to see because it's the place where they have the most connections. because the content that goes on Snapchat tends to be viewed by a smaller number of people, and because it's a little bit easier to sort of contain who's going to have access to it, it becomes a little bit more real to the personality of who the individual people are. They tend to feel like they can be a little bit more themselves on that site. So Snapchat is a little less polished and a little more kind of comfortable and easygoing than some of the other channels. Now, Snapchat usage is definitely growing. Well, it's been around for several years now. Just in the last year, we've seen a 350% increase in the amount of videos that people are watching. That number comes in at over 10 billion videos a day being watched by Snapchat users now. And that's really a pretty astonishing growth rate. And it's really the thing that has kind of tipped it over into that point of viability and really made it the type of channel that companies need to consider taking a look at and seeing if there might be space to market on. Now, there's several things that make Snapchat different from some of the other options out there. One of the big ones is that Snapchat offers people sort of a direct interaction between friends. There's several different types of content that you can post, and we'll go over those a little bit later in the video. But the thing to really keep in mind is that users have the option of saying, I'm going to take this picture, or I'm going to shoot this little video, or I'm going to write this message, and I'm going to send it to just 3 of my friends or 4 of my friends. The same way that they might use SMS messaging, or they might use a program like, WeChat or Line to just connect with a couple of people, but they're able to do it in the environment of sort of a more traditional social media channel. So it's a little bit easier to have that more personal touch to it because that interaction is happening more via either direct contact or small group contact. The other big thing that comes with it is the messages that are sent in those sort of direct messaging back and forth with people. Once they're viewed, they vanish, like they expire, they're gone, there's no record of them. So for a lot of users, especially in that younger generation that have started to worry, well, what I put on Facebook, that might come back and haunt me later. Maybe my grandmother will see it or an employer will see it. And they want to feel the freedom to be a little bit more themselves without necessarily having to worry about, the longer term repercussions. They tend to really like and appreciate that the content has a really short lifespan. So that's less anxiety for them. Now, the other thing that kind of comes into play is this quote from Connor Jones at Go Fish Digital, where he explains that Snapchat doesn't really have a social ripple effect. And what we mean by that is if you post something to Facebook, it might sit there for, a couple hours or for a day, and maybe 1 or 2 people see it and comment on it. But then maybe on that second day, someone new sees it and they post a comment, and then their friends see it and they come in and post a comment. And pretty soon there's a completely different conversation going on than what you intended. Or maybe one of your friends shares it and then their followers get to see it and one of their friends shares it. And things kind of take on a life of their own, that sort of viral impact. Well, with Snapchat and the fact that the content that you put up times out and it's not really shareable, it makes people feel a little bit more security in terms of what they can place. And the reason that that's such a sort of selling point for the millennial crowd is that it has all the benefits of a social network, connecting with your friends, engaging with them, seeing what's going on in their life. But it's kind of missing the grandma effect. There's less worry that your mom or your grandmother will see what you're like with your friends. So it's comforting for them. They feel like they can be more real and more true to who they are. Whereas on other social channels, they feel like they sort of have to be a little more careful and put up a more polished front or a more polished image. Now, we need to understand that from that side, it's going to impact both what types of businesses are going to use it and how it's going to be a fit for them. So if you're asking yourself if this is a space that you need to play in, a lot of it's going to come down to that starting question of whether or not you're a B2B focused company or a B2C focused company. Now, there's a few high-tech brands like GE, HubSpot that tend to play pretty successfully in this space, B2B businesses. But mostly you're going to find a higher focus and a higher adoption rate among not just B2C brands, but B2C brands who target millennials. So a much younger skewing, product. If your primary target audience for your B2C company is people ages 40 and up, it's probably not going to be the place that you're going to see a lot of success right at this moment. But if your company is the type that really has a high adoption rate and a high focus on that younger audience, and if you've got a little bit more of a kind of hip or relaxed or, freewheeling nature to your sort of your brand image, there's a much higher chance that you're going to be successful playing in this particular social channel. Now, there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind in terms of what marketing on Snapchat looks like. And one of the biggest ones is the idea that there's no heavy selling. There's not really any direct push or selling. A lot of the things that would be viewed as acceptable when you were on Facebook or Twitter or even Instagram makes you kind of come across a little more shady, a little more like a used car salesman on Snapchat. So you need to make sure that you're coming into it with a much more playful interaction. And while you can absolutely include, discount offers or, specials or things that motivate people to purchase, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that feels a little bit less pushy and a little bit more like you're engaging in sort of playful banter and some fun with them. You also might want to consider that if the audience that you primarily target is not that younger millennial brand, it might still be worthwhile to kind of watch through this video series, get an understanding of Snapchat and how it works, but maybe to just watch and observe for a little while. Because for many brands, there's the potential that in another year or two, we're going to see the audience start to age up, or we might see adoption rates expand to include different demographics. We are starting to see higher adoption rates in, 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds with Snapchat, but it's still a little slower moving. And it kind of still remains to be seen whether or not we'll get the broader buy-in that we've seen happen on other channels, again, like Pinterest or Instagram on Snapchat, or whether it will stay with that younger demographic. Now, currently, the demographic on Instagram, we've talked about the fact that it's really young, but it's also important to keep in mind that right now it's made up of about 70% women. And 71% of the users of Snapchat are under 25. So again, that's going to heavily skew which businesses are going to find a lot of value in it because it's going to come down to who your target audience is. That's why when it comes down to deciding whether or not this is going to be a channel for you, you need to keep in mind what I said earlier, that Snapchat is not currently a top-tier social network. It's a secondary social network. And there's the very real possibility that it may stay that way. Again, a channel like LinkedIn has been around for years and years and years. It's established, everyone is aware of it, but it's not the type of place that everybody across a broad demographic goes to every single day. It's more of a niche area. So it's possible that Snapchat will stay like that, or it may fade out entirely, as we see places like Facebook competing against it with Instagram. You really need to take the time to go through the course, spend a little bit of time playing around with it, getting a feel for it, understanding what it's like, and then gauge its value to you and decide whether or not it's the type of place that makes sense for your company to invest some marketing time and effort in. Now, going through some of the pros and cons of Snapchat, it's important to understand what it has to offer to you, but also what some of the limitations are. So one of the biggest limitations is that much like Instagram, there isn't any way to have a click through. You can't get a direct link from a post to your site. So that leaves you a couple of options. The primary one is kind of communicating to people, giving them some information, and then making use of something like a tiny URL, or encouraging people to take a screen cap, as the image passes by, to take that little screen cap using the tools on their phone so that they can go back and look at it and end up typing it into their computer or typing it in, on their mobile device. But that's really a big limitation. One, because it makes it hard for people to take immediate action and, go straight from that posting that you've given them into the link that you want them to get to, but also because it makes it a lot harder to track. Now, clearly, if you're using something like a tiny URL, that's going to give you some ability to, have some tracking code enabled there and be able to see what the pass-through rate is, who's making use of it. But it's still a lot more difficult to know what's the lag time between when they see it and when they actually type it in. Are you certain that they clicked through from, the Snapchat link, or did someone maybe see it on Snapchat, share it on another channel, and people picked up that tiny URL and put it from there? So it does make it a little bit harder to do your measurement. Now, the upside is this is a channel that kind of harkens back to those really early days of social media when it was a little looser and easier and a little more freewheeling. So for a lot of companies, it's a refreshing place to engage and play. Again, because it doesn't have to be quite so polished. You're using your finger to draw something on a screen or, to add stickers here and there, and that's generally how pretty much everyone uses it. So, especially if you're a smaller company and you don't have the same production capabilities that a lot of other brands do, this is a place where it's a little bit less noticeable. And again, you have a little bit more freedom to, kind of play on par with the bigger companies. So, looking at it as a place where you have the possibility to build brand equity instead of purely focusing on conversions, that opens up the door for it to maybe be a nice distraction for your team to get a chance to get in there, to do some playing, to do some testing, and just to get a feel for what the response is. Now, we also have the idea of discovery and, that potential downside of the fact that there isn't a social ripple. So we talked earlier about how no social ripple is viewed as a plus for the millennial audience because they don't have to worry about their message spreading so far. But of course, as a business, that's one of the primary reasons that we engage in social media is we want our message to be shareable, to be spreadable. Now in Snapchat, because there's not really the ability to have that happen, it's a lot more difficult to build momentum. In fact, Snapchat doesn't do anything to make recommendations to people of, who to follow or what brands they might want to engage with. So it usually means that you're going to need to rely on some combination of paid exposure or making use of your other channels and letting people know that they can find you on Snapchat to gain those followers and to gain those connections. Now, the upside that comes back is, well, ads are still pretty expensive. Snapchat does let you import phone numbers from your phone, like from your contact list, to find out who on your contact list has a Snapchat account so that you can instantly send those connection requests. Now, what a lot of businesses are doing, especially smaller ones that, maybe have couple thousand couple thousand contacts instead of, databases of millions, is that you can import the phone numbers from your CRM into the contacts of your phone and then let Snapchat crawl those contacts and follow the list. And that can be a good starting point. Again, for those smaller brands, it's a great way to get in there pretty easily and set up those starting points without necessarily having to pay for all the ads. Now, the measurement side, again, becomes a fairly big downside because analytics are almost non-existent. In fact, you don't even get a follower account on Snapchat. You just get sort of a proprietary score that no one knows exactly what it's made up of, where Snapchat kind of ranks, how prevalent are you as a brand? That's going to be a combination of how many followers you have, how often you post, how much people engage with you. So it's a lot harder to really understand sort of your positioning. Now, also, you can measure the views, how many people view a message you put out there. You can measure how many of them take a screen cap or a screen capture of what you put out, and you can measure replies. But much like your snaps, much like the messages you put up, that data vanishes. In fact, it's only available for 24 hours. So unless you have someone going in every single day to pull that data down, it's going to be very difficult to do any type of long-term measurement. Now, the upside of this is that there are some things you can measure. You can measure the views of each snap within a story, and we'll talk more about stories and what they look like in the next section. But you do have some ability to figure out, sort of how far into the mix people get, to kind of say what's the drop-off rate, what's the interest in what we're putting out there, and sort of get a feel for what people like and for how engaged they are with particular content. Now, again, it's hard to connect it to much more than that. So think of it as sort of a flash in the pan view of your popularity, and that's about it. So as we move into the next couple lessons within this training module, I want you to come at it from the angle of familiarizing yourself with the marketing opportunity and then make the commitment to spend a little bit of time checking out the channel and running some tests. Don't go, full bore, hey, we've got to take over Snapchat. But again, just get in there, do a little bit of playing around and look to see, do we get a response? Are we finding some of our audience there? Have we uploaded our CRM and checked to see, What percentage of them actually have accounts? If it's just a teeny tiny fraction, you probably don't need to go any further than that. But you may be surprised to find that you do have a decent amount of people that you engage with otherwise in business that also happen to have Snapchat accounts. And if that's the case, you're going to want to put a little bit of time and effort into saying, hey, maybe this is something that's worth doing some testing and figuring out how people respond to things. Now, our key takeaways from this video are things like, with over 200 million active users, most of whom are under 25, Snapchat has definitely crossed the threshold and become a second-tier social channel that's worth considering. Now, Snapchat does not allow for direct link click-throughs, so you need to make sure that you have in the back of your mind to find other ways to push for calls to action. Snapchat has virtually no discovery. That means you're going to have to work pretty hard to gain followers. Snapchat measurement is still in its infancy. That makes it a little more difficult to get a solid grasp on the long-term impact of your efforts, and that's something you want to keep in mind in terms of your measurement. And also, Snapchat is not a channel right now that's going to be necessary for every business, so consider your time investment carefully. Getting started with Snapchat. After watching this video, you should be prepared to create your first Snapchat account and upload your first snaps, to build your first Snapchat story sequence and test audience reaction, and to outline the 3 styles of content a brand can upload to Snapchat. Now, if Snapchat is a new social media channel to you and you haven't really had a chance to play around with it or get started yet, the first thing you're going to need to do is download it. Unlike Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest and some of the other channels, there isn't a web-based interface that you can use for Snapchat. The only way to engage with a social media channel is using a mobile device. So whether you're on an iPhone or you're on an Android device, you'll need to go in and download it from the relevant store, set up your account, and get the ball rolling. Now, there's 3 primary types of content that you can put together for Snapchat. And they include a snap, a story, and what's called a live story. Now, for the most part, those first 2, the snap and the story, are what you're able to put together as a brand. And we're going to go a little deeper on those. And then the live story becomes a part that you have the potential to participate in. So those are kind of the 3 that you want to have in the back of your mind. Now, when we dig a little deeper into these, the idea of a snap is basically either a photo or a video message. Now, the video is limited to 10 seconds in length, and that message is sent to specific people on your user list. So again, think of things like direct messaging or sending, a Facebook Messenger request or something that you might send out on, again, Line or WeChat, or even sort of an SMS message. It's very similar in concept to that. The thing that makes a snap so specific is that they disappear after they've been opened and watched. So they have a very short time span, and it's the type of thing that you send knowing that people won't be able to watch it over and over and over. Now, again, if it's a photo, they have the ability to take a screen cap of it, but outside of that, whatever it is you send is going to very quickly vanish. Now, a Snapchat story is a compilation of snaps that you've gathered over a 24-hour time span. So this sits in a different place within Snapchat, and unlike a snap, which is sent to specific people, a story can be viewed by anyone who's following you or is connected with you on Snapchat. These can also be viewed more than once. So think of them as sort of a rolling compilation, because you could be, say, in Las Vegas for the day, or maybe you're in Bali for the day. And over the course of that day, you're adding, different pictures or different videos that are just part of your experience. As you add them, they tag on to the end of the story. So when someone's watching the story, it will play through from photo to video to photo to photo, whatever order you've uploaded them. And once the timestamp on any of those pieces of content reaches 24 hours, it will vanish from the mix. So a story might be something that you put together over the course of a day, and then maybe you don't do anything for a while and you start another one a few days later. Or your story can always be sitting there. It's just the content in it is perpetually changing. So the idea behind a story is to help promote longer term engagement. There's a reason for people to come back in and look at your story Even though maybe they saw it earlier in the day, they might be checking it again to see what you've added into the tail end of it. And again, that key difference between a snap and a story is that a snap only appears to the people that you choose to send it to, while a story is visible to everyone that you are connected to within Snapchat. So you can see an example over here on the right of a Snapchat story that was posted by a friend of mine while they were in Las Vegas, where he kept uploading different photos over the course of the day, just as he's traveling through this different convention. Now, a live story, as you can see things passing by on the left, is a curated collection of snaps around a certain event. Maybe a music festival, maybe it's breaking news or a sporting event, basically whatever Snapchat chooses. Now, these stories are curated by Snapchat editors that go out and look at the different pictures, videos, uploads that Snapchat users are posting into their feed or sending in to a news feed. And they're gathering them together. Now, there is the possibility of participating in a live story by curating or collecting content that's related to that topic, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be right in that mix. And as of right now, companies do not yet have the ability to choose a live story that they want to format on their own. Now, again, you can encourage your followers to send you as a brand their snaps around a certain event, and you can in turn republish those snaps as part of your story. It's not going to work quite the same way as a live story, but there are some ways to sort of recreate it. Now, there's also an area of Snapchat called Discover. These are curated collections of content that are created in conjunction with third-party content sites like Cosmopolitan or Tastemade or Mashable. Different sites that have a partnership that gather together, again, different content, different videos to create sort of a story or customized content around a particular topic. Usually they lead to videos or they lead to articles. This is an area that there will probably be room to play in terms of paid sponsorship down the road. But for right now, these are still created and curated by Snapchat and partners of Snapchat. Now, when it comes to the idea of your followers, there's a few different ways to follow someone. One, you can go in and search for them by their username. You can also have your phone go through your contacts to see if anyone in your contact list has a Snapchat account. So you might remember we spoke back in the first video about the possibility of downloading the contacts from your CRM into your phone contacts and then using that to be able to make those connections within Snapchat. Now, if you happen to be at maybe an event, maybe you're at a sporting event or a meeting someplace, you can also connect via Wi-Fi connection. You can look for other users that are nearby. And then finally, by using what's called a snapcode. And if you look at the image on the left, you'll see the sort of the ghost shape in the yellow box with all the little dots. It kind of might remind you of a QR code. And it's a very similar concept. That snapcode is the type of thing where people can take a picture of the image and upload it into Snapchat, and the combination of little black dots that show up there will help tie a user back to your account. So, you can print it out and put it up on a window somewhere in your store if you wanted to. Now, as I mentioned back in the first video, Snapchat does not yet suggest accounts for people to follow. So again, it's not easy to find people. You have to actually make sure you're doing some promotion on other channels, either by being really clear on exactly what your username is or posting your Snapchat or your snap code, giving people a way to find you and connect with you. Now, as I mentioned, that snap code basically functions like a QR code and can be scanned and used to find a member. Now, your snap code can be downloaded so that you can actually incorporate it into your marketing and other locations. You can go onto their website, download the image itself, and if you wanted to put it out on maybe your Instagram page or on your Facebook page or send it out as part of one of your email marketing campaigns, that can be an excellent way to get some exposure and get it in front of people so that they have a quick and easy way to come and find you on Snapchat and actually connect with you. Now, in terms of using the Snapchat interface, it's important to keep in mind that unlike a lot of the popular social media channels, Snapchat is not intuitive. In fact, it's known for having a pretty complicated user interface. So you don't necessarily want to expect it to be easy to find your way around. In fact, if you're sort of above their 30-year-old demographic, you may play around with it for a couple minutes and find that you need to go get someone who's more familiar with it and say, what is this and how does it work? Or go look something up. Because while I'm going to walk you through the different areas of it here in a minute, understand that they also update the interface pretty often. So about the time you get comfortable with it and you know where everything is, there's a pretty good chance they're going to make a change again. Now, the little yellow window up in the corner, that's what's going to let you access the page where you add friends or you update your snapcode. You make a change to what things look like. The search box, pretty self-explanatory. This is basically gives you quick access to chat with your friends or search for new ones. Now over on the right, we have options for taking nighttime pictures, for controlling whether the flash is on or off, and whether you're using the forward-facing camera or the standard, back-facing camera. Down at the bottom, you've got a little sort of message icon. That's what's going to open up a window to give you the option for sort of quick chats with your friends, sending messages back and forth. That main circle in the middle, if you tap it, that will allow you to take a picture. If you hold it, like tap and hold, it will allow you to take a video, and you have to hold it for the entire length of the video you're trying to take. The little image underneath it allows you to access the camera roll that exists on your phone. So maybe you've taken a picture or a video, just as part of your everyday camera usage, and you want to be able to pull that in and use it within Snapchat. And then finally, the three little dots that appear over in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to tap that to access stories, both your story and your friend's stories. And keep in mind, those stories are the compilation of snaps and videos that people put into the mix over that 24-hour period. Now, when it comes to setting up your personal profile, sort of your home space within Snapchat, you'll need to set up your snapcode, which basically is a series of 5 pictures or shots taken in rapid succession. So what's going to happen is you're going to use your front-facing camera and you're going to get the option to take your pictures, and it's going to snap a picture and then pause for about a second and then snap another picture, and then it will sort of play them like an animated GIF. Now, from this page, you can also add friends and access your setup options. So looking at the screen, if you click that yellow box, that's what's going to allow you to capture pictures and create your unique snapcode. Again, the compilation of little black dots all over the place, that's going to stay the same, but the picture that's showing up in the center of the ghost icon, that's what you're going to have some freedom and ability to be able to change. Now at that bottom section where it says added me or add friends or my friends, that's going to let you look to see who has added you into the mix. It's going to give you the freedom to add new friends or new connections, and it's also going to let you browse through your friends list to see, who's there and who you're connected with. Now up in the top right corner, that's where the setup account info is. That's where you're going to go in to be able to set who can view. In general, you want to set who can view to everyone, because that's going to give people not the ability to see all of your content, but the ability to see that you're there and that you exist so that they can choose to follow you. Okay, so when it comes to increasing your followers, it's important to remember that it's really critical to take the time to really kind of promote your brand and make sure people from other social channels and other ways that you interact are aware that you're here, because people will not be able to see your content unless they're following you. Even if they're there and you're there, if they don't know you're there and they haven't taken the time to follow you, it's not going to show up. It isn't like Facebook where if someone comments on your post or likes your post or shares your post, it's going to show up for everyone. Also, there isn't really a way to tag users, and there's not really targeted advertising set up just yet. So it's really difficult to get coverage or exposure unless you've done the work to get people to actually become your followers on the site. Now, your snap code, as I've mentioned, is kind of the key way to get this to get people to follow you. The easiest way to let them find where you are and what you need to do. So you can see an example over here of someone sharing to their Facebook feed. Here's where you can follow me. Here's the step-by-step instructions you need to do to make this work. Sometimes people put it out on Twitter, even in your storefront or even in an email. It's about using your existing network to help promote things. Now, wrapping up this video, the key takeaways and the things you really want to remember from this particular video are one, that a snap can only be viewed once by the specific users you send it to. And this is what makes them really good for direct engagement and special offers, or even for testing offers. Two is that Snapchat stories, on the other hand, are visible to anyone who follows you, and they offer an excellent way to build engagement between your brand and Snapchat users. Number three, the Snapchat interface is not intuitive, and it changes on a regular basis. So taking the time to familiarize yourself with how it works is going to be really important. Number four, users can only see content posted by the accounts they follow, and this is why it's critical to work on building your follower count. And then finally, since Snapchat does not suggest accounts for users to follow, it's critical to promote your Snapchat account via other marketing channels and other social networks. Marketing with Snapchat. After watching this video, you should be prepared to realize the unique style and format Snapchat users enjoy applying to their photo creations, to understand when to send snaps directly to users versus when to leverage stories, and to realize the value of celebrity takeovers and when to use them. Now, back in part 1 and 2 of this video series, we talked about the fact that Snapchat, while it's reached sort of that tipping point of adoption rates, still hasn't really reached the point where it's broken through into mainstream marketing. So a couple things that we want to keep in mind are that a lot of your competitors probably haven't figured out how to leverage Snapchat yet. Again, unless you're dealing with a major brand or, sort of an early adopter, first movers, the target millennials, outside of that, most of the brand channels and companies still really haven't done much more than maybe dip their toes in the water. And so there's a lot of opportunity here to potentially get first mover advantage. And that's why taking the time to familiarize yourself with Snapchat, going in and running some searches to see, can you find any of your competitors there? Can you find any like-minded or maybe complementary businesses, and looking to see what they're doing and how they're engaging can be a really good way to get some sort of ideas of where the marketplace sits and whether or not you're going to have the opportunity to, again, come in as that first mover. Now, Snapchat really has done an excellent job of pulling in a lot of the millennial audience, primarily because there's not so much of a marketing feel to it. When Snapchat is done right, it really feels authentic to users because, again, there's not really ads scrolling by in the same way. Your grandmother's not there, sharing 50 million forwards and copy and paste this to your status. It feels to the younger generation like a place that's theirs, where they can just be yourself. Things don't have to be so polished and perfect. So that's one of the things you want to keep in mind as a business is, again, as a smaller company, it gives you a little bit of an advantage because you don't have to have the same technology and capabilities and sort of polish to the content that you're creating when you're on Snapchat that you might need to on, say a Pinterest or, Facebook. So it's really important to make sure that before you start to leverage Snapchat as your business, that you have a personal account set up, you connect with some friends, you follow some other brands, and you look to see how other people are using it. Because for a lot of companies, there's that desire to just come in and right off the bat, hit it with that perfectly polished marketing perspective. And on Snapchat, as of right now, that doesn't play so well. So it's little things like when you're taking your pictures or you're shooting your videos and images display in portrait format, not in landscape format. So you want to make sure you capture them that way. Don't hold your phone sideways to take the picture or shoot the video, because that's what's going to be required of the people on Snapchat that are looking at your image, and they don't want to flip it. They want to be able to just keep scrolling through the same way they'd use everything else. So again, little changes like that seem really easy once we get to know them, but if you don't take the time to think about the difference in how people use Snapchat, it can kind of slip you up a little bit. Now, it's also things like considering the drawing tools. And I know for a lot of brand managers, this almost feels silly to be like, I'm literally, pushing this little pen button and picking a color and scribbling all over my picture. And yet that's how people use Snapchat. That's the authenticity. That's what it feels like to customize that pen color, add a filter to a picture, add a little heart stickers all over something that's cute. add your little text description across the bottom. Snapchat users love to doodle on pictures and videos. They love, snappy little, captions that go across the text box on the bottom. So have some fun playing around with those. And again, spend some time observing how your user base, posts things. Follow people, look through their stories, look to see what's going up online, and find ways where you can mimic that style while still staying true to your brand and your goals and what you want to communicate. Now, one of the other great things about Snapchat is the fact that followers can send you their snaps, and those snaps won't be viewable to the public. So again, if you think of a direct message on Twitter, or you think of, messages coming through Facebook Messenger, the sort of quiet, private back and forth dialogue. There's a lot of opportunity for that on Snapchat. And so that opens up the door for some good engagement, but also for things like contesting and marketing purposes. Encouraging those consumer generated submissions can be an excellent way to kind of tease people with potential without necessarily costing yourself a fortune. So, for example, 16 Handles, which is a froyo shop in New York City. They ran a campaign where it was from, these certain dates during certain hours. If you snapped a picture of you or your friends tasting the flavors, because there's, free tastes in there, just take a picture of yourself doing that and just literally send the snap of it to Love 16 Handles to their account. When they got the picture, they'd snap back a coupon. Now, it might be 16% off, 50% off, or 100% off, but there's two keys here. One, because snaps disappear 10 seconds after you open them, people can't check to see what the discount is until they're literally standing there at the cash register ready to touch it and show it to the person who's checking them out. So you've kind of got that benefit and that creative way to say, yeah, you might get 100% off, but you might also get, 10% off. So there's a fun element to it, and people kind of have to be ready to go ahead with a transaction without necessarily knowing what that discount deal is going to be. So it kind of changes up, that discount side of things a little bit. So looking at creative ideas like this, those random contests, or, saying, hey, we'll give it back to everyone. Here's exactly what you'll get. All of those things are possibilities in Snapchat, and you have the chance to play around and try a lot of different things. Now, even besides things like surprise discounts or, the direct messages back and forth of, share things with us, a lot of companies are finding creative ways to leverage the combination of stories and direct snaps to run other types of contests. So, for example, Delta Airlines set up Snapchat geofilters all over Los Angeles. So if you were within, certain geographical restriction, outside of a store or at a certain spot on the beach, when you went to take a picture of yourself, you could trigger that geofilter image. You can see an example down here below of one showing up. And then they used things like their other social media channels and their stories to basically drop hints of where to go to find them. So that sent interested Snapchat users basically on a scavenger hunt across LA to try and find these locations so that they could snap a picture of themselves, with the filter on top of it, send it directly to Delta, and, put posts on Facebook and other places to be able to win prizes. So it was, again, a really creative way to leverage sort of that all access possibility that comes from adding things into your Snapchat story while also accessing sort of the more private communication style of Snapchat, while also leveraging sort of the back and forth, surprise of direct snaps between a Snapchat user and the brand to be able to get that engagement and get sort of some of that fun going on. And there's all sorts of examples if you go and search on Google of companies all over the world that have started to play with this idea of, these scavenger hunts in particular because of how geofilters can be triggered places. Now, there's also the idea that making use of your Snapchat story to get that message out, that's absolutely critical. It's using your Snapchat story is kind of like the email marketing of Snapchat, or, having something posted right there to the front page, or, front page of your website, or pinned on your Twitter feed or your Facebook feed. It's trying to make sure that it has exposure to everyone. That story section opens up the door for you to create sort of a revolving door of content and of value. They're really the most obvious marketing channel on Snapchat because they last all day. And anyone who follows you can view them and you can continue to add to them. So even as, the first image or, the first little video snippet times out, there's always new ones coming up. So it's sort of like an ongoing narrative or dialogue from your brand to your Snapchat users. So thinking about the different ways that you might be able to offer value, and again, looking at some of the examples of what brands out there are doing, it's a great way to say, how can we leverage this? And probably the closest thing I could equate it to is the type of content that we might see pop up on, say, Facebook Live. So Taco Bell in the United States is a great example of this. They regularly put up what they call Taco Bell menu hacks, where they will say, here's the completely made up name of a food item, and then here's the items off our menu that you order, and here's how you sort of reassemble them to create this new thing that isn't even on our menu. And they're constantly coming up with new ideas. People can take a video and send it to Taco Bell saying, here's the one I made up. And it might be the type of thing that Taco Bell will decide to turn around and use down the road. But these types of videos that, again, they're evergreen and that they're always of interest, but they time out. Thus, there's always a reason to create a new one and to add new ones into the mix. Now, thinking about some of the marketing options that are available here, there's so many different things that you could compile and share in a story on Snapchat. So again, taking the time to look and see what other brands are doing, run some searches, look for some case studies, and think about your audience. But a couple sort of broad generic level ideas that I want to put out there are things like putting together a step-by-step guide on how to do something. Again, each step could be a photo or it could be a short video, and you can compile them together in order for story. Giving shout outs to customer ideas or to pure loyalty, taking those snaps that people send you and republishing them and giving them credit in part of your storyline. Maybe telling a behind the scenes story or using it to announce something new. Do a walkthrough of your office or of your storefront or, your factory where you're manufacturing something. Maybe live snap an event that you're attending, putting up combinations of pictures and videos and interviews and snaps that are being sent to you, kind of that curated look at what's happening at the event. All of these are a great use of Snapchat stories. Now, another thing that some brands look at and that can be worth considering depending on sort of who your target audience is, what your budget looks like, is the idea of a brand takeover. This is something that we used to see pop up occasionally on Pinterest and then kind of migrated over to Instagram and now into Snapchat. And the idea here is that a brand partners an influencer on Snapchat and allows them to take over the channel for a day, creating or compiling a story, something that's sort of from their perspective, but still has some brand parameters attached to it. A great example of this is when Sour Patch Kids paired up with Logan Paul, who's really well known on both Instagram and on Snapchat and was popular on Vine, to basically film hijinks and pranks in New York City. Now, the stunt compiled millions of views and over 120,000 new followers on Snapchat. Their first story had over 500,000 views, and by their fifth, they had 6.8 million views. Again, it was really just Logan Paul and the two Snapchat mascots kind of doing various, hijinks, friendly things, pranky things all around New York City and just posting them and saying, hey, here's what we're doing. Now, it's important to remember that a takeover like this can cost a lot of money. For a high-end influencer, you're easily looking at, 6 digits. Even for a low-end influencer, you're probably looking at, maybe a couple thousand minimum. So it's not going to be the type of thing that's for every brand. But it is something that's worth giving some consideration to, or even figuring out a smaller way to do it and letting one of your employees kind of do a takeover for the day, giving different areas of your business the chance to represent and to put their information up. Now, as I said, the idea of a Snapchat takeover doesn't have to be a celebrity. It could be an influencer, it could be an employee, a public figure. There's a lot of different ways to come at this. So the idea of looking for maybe an influencer maybe doesn't even have a really big following on Snapchat yet. Maybe they're well respected elsewhere, but they have interesting things to say. There's credibility with them. And sometimes there's going to be an opportunity for you as a brand to maybe partner up with an influencer who's looking to build their own following on Snapchat, but who also has, again, the credibility and recognition that maybe also adds something to you. And maybe there's opportunity there to be able to come up with an idea that's going to cost a little bit less because it's mutually beneficial. Maybe it is going back to that idea I mentioned of letting an employee take over and focus on, specific personality type, or, maybe the lifestyle of what some of your employees like to do, on the weekends that maybe is a good fit for your target audience. Brands like Patagonia could definitely embrace that one if they've got people that, go hiking or, base jumping or different things. The idea of a customer takeover, maybe one that's run through contests where it's not so much that you give a customer direct access to do the posting, but the idea is that you're soliciting those snapbacks from your audience and you're going to repost them as part of a customer takeover. Lots of opportunity with that. The thing to keep in mind is that you want to make sure you're taking precautions. If you've got someone else who you're actually literally giving, the ability to post, again, whether that's an influencer, celebrity, a public figure, or, you're letting a marketing group put together even a made-up character. Make sure that you've got some precautions in place. You have some brand goals outlined, any limitations outlined, and if it's possible to be there in person to sort of observe what's going on, that's usually a pretty good idea as well. Now, there's also some creative ways to offer promo codes. We talked about the idea of letting people send a snap to you, the brand, and then you snapping back with some type of promo code or offer. Stories are a great place to tease those promo codes. We can see an example over here on the left, of, hey, stick around, friends, you just might get 15% off. And then they sort of slowly, picture by picture by picture, pulled off all the different pieces of the pizza to give you the coupon code that you needed to be able to get the discount. So using something that's either a really easy to remember code, because again, remember, even stories, they tend to go by pretty quickly. Or before you get to that code, having something that pops up that encourages them to take a screen grab or a screenshot of the code so that they have it and they can access it at a later date is really going to help out. Now, you want to make sure that you're trying to do the best you can to track redemption. There's some challenges with doing this on Snapchat because, again, the analytics aren't really tied in very well to other areas yet, so it can be kind of hard to really get the data that we're used to having across different channels. So make sure you have something in place to do your best to track redemption, and if it's low, consider a better offer, or maybe test a better offer with some direct snapbacks to a small select group of people to see what's that trigger point where all of a sudden people tend to respond better. That gives you the chance to do some testing and to adjust your discounts over time to make sure you're keeping your ROI strong enough to have value, but you're also making the offer good enough to encourage people to participate in it. Now, contests also work great with stories to create engagement because that story environment gives you a great interactive way to outline and set up your contest. Whether you're going to ask them to snap something back to you, you're going to ask them to screen cap because Snapchat will, remember, keep track of who screen grabs or does a screen cap, so you can go back and look at those names to pick a winner. So again, we'll see an example over here on the left. Snapchatters, let the hunt begin. How snap us back a foodie doodle. And they gave you an example of, literally just using the different color of pencils and your finger to draw. Someone did a foodie doodle of a pizza. And it was, hey, send them back to us and we'll pick 10 random snaps between now and midnight and they'll win something. And they sent out a discount code. Again, lots of opportunities to put together really pretty simple contests, coming up with the idea and, putting everything together that you're going to put up online doesn't tend to take a super long time. So there's a lot of opportunity here for very low investment to test things to see how well they work. Now, thinking about marketing options, leveraging those contests that require snapbacks and encourage self-expression, those are really big on this channel. Going online, running searches for Snapchat scavenger hunts, looking at pretty much anything Grubhub has done on Snapchat will have loads and loads of great examples. And remembering that, again, that self-expression and that authenticity and sort of the ease of submission, that's a really big part of anything that's taking place on Snapchat is what can, teens and 20-somethings just quickly kind of throw together on their phone where they feel like they're creating something and it's reflective of who they are. That's the type of marketing options that really tend to do the best on Snapchat. Also, think about the idea of creating community filters. We've talked about the idea of geo filters. Those are sponsored, branded filters tied to a specific location. But people can design and upload what are called community filters at no cost as long as there's no branding included. So this might be something that maybe you share to your other channels and say, hey, go check out, the free community filters that we've created for, this particular spot or this city or this location. These are great for things like cities and parks and monuments and, touristy spots. So just putting, again, some of that fun and some of that personality in and claiming credit elsewhere, knowing you're not going to be able to claim credit right there, by branding it to you. But that's also a way to play to that authenticity and play to the mindset and the giving nature and sort of some of the originality that came in with social media that still exists on Snapchat, even though we've seen it fade away on a lot of the other channels. It's really about getting creative, searching for ideas and running tests. There's great examples out there, but Snapchat marketing is still really new. And the rules, quite honestly, are really freewheeling. There's not a lot of limitations in a terms of service that says, yes, you can do this, but you can't do that because we'll shut down your account. There's a lot of chance here for you to say, what could we come up with? What do we think would be really interesting? What if we always wanted to try on another channel, but we can't because of the terms of service? And to say, we're going to give it a go on Snapchat. We're going to see what happens with it. This is your chance to get creative and to really play around with one of the up and coming channels. Now, your key takeaways from this video are things like the format of Snapchat stories gives you strong marketing potential, especially for brands that want to compile valuable content. So don't overlook the value of those. Customer or celebrity takeovers have proven popular with many, many brands, but make sure you move forward cautiously and that you have a clear plan in place, especially when it comes to things like brand guidelines. Testing out promo codes with a limited audience and using direct snaps to test them before launching them to everybody via stories. Again, play around to see what does that promo code need to be to really trigger activity, then launch it to a bigger crowd. Community filters give an excellent way to build credibility and to give back to the Snapchat community. Take the time to explore them and think about, creating one or two and putting them out there. And then finally, Snapchat marketing is still so very new. So don't be afraid to get creative and test and try different ideas. Snapchat, advertising, and partnership. After watching this video, you should be prepared to list 4 specific approaches to make Snapchat an effective part of your marketing efforts. To identify at least one Snapchat-specific feature that can serve as a launch point for a new marketing idea. To outline the costs and potential limitations of Snapchat's current advertising system, and to execute a small budget targeted geofilter ad campaign on Snapchat. So one of the things to keep in mind with Snapchat is that whether you're looking at putting together an organic campaign or a paid advertising campaign, there's several Snapchat tips that are really going to apply sort of across the board. So I want to walk you through 4 quick and easy tips to keep in mind when you're putting together your upcoming Snapchat campaigns. The first one is the idea of using Snapchat to reach a demographic. Now, when I say demographic, keep in mind that I don't necessarily just mean that age range. We can go on to almost any social media channel and we can use the advertising tools, the targeting tools to narrow down to an age range. What I'm talking about on Snapchat is sort of a mindset. Yes, we tend to see predominantly, one age range demographic there, but we also tend to see the most sort of tech savvy, millennials showing up on this channel. And there's a different type and style of engagement that really plays well here. So remember that Snapchat gives you the opportunity to reach that demographic and make them aware of campaigns that maybe you would pay a little bit more or struggle a little bit more to get in front of them elsewhere. Taco Bell is a great example of a company that does this. In fact, we've already used them as an example in this lesson so far. But Taco Bell uses it to promote their Live Más scholarship. And again, they're making use of stories and saying, hey, we're looking for our next group of Live Más scholarship winners, saying, this isn't your ordinary scholarship. It's not about grades. It's not about test scores. It's about, looking for innovators and creators and dreamers. And take note here that it says screenshot the next slide for how to enter, because once the next one starts to autoplay, that's where you're going to have the rules, the deadline, and the link. So again, it's that reminder, and it's playing to that specific environment that exists on Snapchat to remind people, hey, take a screen cap of this because this is where we're going to be putting in the information that you're really going to want. So Snapchat is a great place, again, whether ads or whether through organic, to reach a specific demographic. Tip number 2 is it's your chance to relax that professional feel. Pinterest really upped the ante for visual beauty. In fact, Pinterest kind of made companies across the board and bloggers across the board start investing in light boxes and better quality cameras and posing everything just right to make sure they had the perfect image so they could put it up on their feed. Snapchat, on the other hand, has had a little bit more impact like YouTube has, where it's actually kind of relaxed the standards and people are open to less of a professional field. Look, you're using a camera phone, so embrace it. And again, it's things like adding those images or those stickers on over top. You see a great example over here of, how a dog shelter is using it. They've got the address in place. Here's where you can find me. Or, the random images that they'll put up throughout the day of the dogs that are available for adoption, or of people, who have said, hey, here's a dog that just came in, come down and meet them. Or they'll also, put out on their Snapchat stories the pictures of people who came in that day and did adopt a dog or a cat and leave with it. So again, relaxing that professional feel and kind of playing to the little bit more playful, easygoing environment that exists on Snapchat. The third tip is the ability to test your content and test your offerings with a small audience. Before you put something in your story, you have the chance to send it to even just randomized connections to look and see what the response is. Track the interaction, tweak the idea a little bit, and give it a little bit more polish before you come back and then publish it into your story where it's going to go out to everybody. Tip 4 is to target the unique features that exist on Netflix. So we think about things like face swapping, which Snapchat really introduced into the social media world. And some of the great campaigns that I've seen pop up that are related to Snapchat are things like Netflix France, who launched a series of posable posters that users could stand in front of and take a picture and face swap with their favorite characters. And if you look really closely at some of these images that pop up, you'll notice that the hashtag that shows up across the top, it's in mirror image. So when you're using your front-facing camera, which again is mirror image, to look at things and to take your picture, that hashtag is going to show up in the proper direction. So whether you're putting it out on Snapchat or whether you're putting it on taking your picture in Snapchat and posting it to Instagram or Facebook or someplace else, it's still targeting those unique features and the unique style and setup that exists within Snapchat is part of that broader campaign. Now, when it comes to Snapchat ads, there's a variety of different options at play. So the standardized Snapchat ads basically run for up to 10 seconds as interstitials during curated stories. So you might be watching the funny people, post that goes up by one of the different channels, and they're saying, hey, we're in West Hollywood, and then they're showing different screen caps, and then all of a sudden you've got an interstitial showing up for the new 2017 Toyota Corolla. So when these show up, the way that you trigger interaction within Snapchat is to do what's called a swipe up. So basically it's placing your finger on the bottom part of the ad and dragging your finger upwards. That's called a swipe up. Now, Snapchat claims that swipe up rates for ads are 5 times higher than the industry engagement average for social media ads. And these ads can feature things that lead to app installs. They can you can swipe up to lead to an article, to videos, all sorts of different pieces of engagement. But again, they show up in the midst of a story that is one of the curated stories or one of the discover stories that shows up already on Snapchat. Now, originally, ads were only available directly from Snapchat to a very limited number of brands, and they started at around $750,000 US per day. Now, clearly, that's out of reach for all but the very, very largest brands. Now, the launch of the ad API is starting to open things up. Now, they can be purchased and managed through approved Snapchat partners. They're still extraordinarily expensive, much more expensive than across any other channel, but that also follows suit with what we've seen happen with social channels across the board, as the largest companies always have the opportunity to come in first, and it can take anywhere from a couple months to usually a couple of years before the ad system sort of gets ironed out enough and some of the targeting gets ironed out enough to bring those prices down to something that's a little bit more reasonable. Now, for those of you who do have big brand or big budgets available for your big brand, A/B split testing is currently available. You can do sequential messaging and remarketing. You can go in and do email matching, interest targeting, and things like lookalike models. Now, when it comes to tracking things, Snapchat ads will track impressions, it'll track swipe up rates, it'll track screen caps, and a couple more things. But again, keep in mind that the way the Snapchat system is set up, it's a lot more difficult to really track some of the things that we've sort of taken for granted across the board in other social media channels. So again, unless you're a major brand, keeping your eyes peeled, watching some case studies, and learning from others as the system sort of gets refined and the prices come down a little bit more is usually going to be the best bet right now. Now, there are some other options that pop up, again, for both big brands, and there's going to be one in here for little brands that is really worth looking at. And in that area, I want to talk to you about what's called geofilters. So we talked back in the third lesson about the idea of creating community geofilters. Now, these are free to create, but they can't have any branding associated with them. So they're the type of things that people might create for their city or, for an event or for a location. So paid advertising geofilters create a themed graphical overlay that can pop up for users that are in a certain area, whatever it's triggered by. These cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and usually are targeted by enterprise companies. Now, Snapchat estimates that national geofilters reach 40 to 60% of daily users. And there's a great example of one here from Jameson that they set up to run on St. Patrick's Day. So you can see the overlay, and then you can see the overlay on top of an image that someone took and added that geofilter overlay to. So again, to get an idea, you're basically putting your branded imaging on top of any picture that they might take and send as a snap or add into their story. Now, one of my favorite features in Snapchat, and personally one of the things I think offers the best advertising opportunity, is the ability to create a custom filter tied to a physical location. This is really great for smaller events, for local retailers. So, it might be for a sporting event. It might even be for a birthday party that you're throwing. They cover a specific geographical area that you outline on a map, and they can cost as little as $5. I mean, if you're literally just applying it to your apartment or, to a small house or, your backyard for a party, and just for a single day or for a couple of hours, they're pretty cheap. They're the type of thing you could do just to have fun. But even for a larger event, for example, I run a large fundraising event each year for a nonprofit that I take care of. And we were looking into setting up an event filter for basically a weekend when the event was going to be at a local high school. So going through their step-by-step process, which again, you just go to their website and look for on-demand geofilters, and it will walk you through. You can create one yourself and upload it to the site, or you can use their really simple walk through templated process, pick what type of occasion it is. They let you pick your colors and different types of options and customize it with your choice, your choice of wording. So walking through that step by step then takes you to a place where you can zoom in on a map and you set your date range and you set your location. So for me to do the entire high school, it was about 136,000 square feet. So that one was going to have a price point of still well under $200, just $166 to run it for the weekend window that the event was taking place at a fairly large facility. So again, you can see that if you're a retail store and you were setting one of these up for, a specialty event or, a one night type of event or activity can become a very, very affordable way to get some branding out there, especially in people's stories or if you're encouraging snapbacks. This is the one area that I see right now that small businesses have a lot of opportunity to come in and play around with and do some testing to see what works really well. Now, keep in mind that you can only set these up a little over a month out from the event. About 5 to 6 weeks seems to be the limit of about how far you can push it. But again, if you know you have several events coming up and you have your designer taking the time to put some of these filters together and someone from your marketing team is going in and setting them up when they're relevant, and putting in the credit card to pay for it, this can be a great way for anything that has a physical location associated with it to do a little bit of testing. Now, continuing through the realm of sort of the specific advertising options that show up on Snapchat, one of the things that Snapchat is probably best known for outside of face swapping is the idea of lenses. Lenses are something that allows a sponsor to come in and create some type of branded imagery or trigger. So if you're familiar with Snapchat, you've probably seen, again, either the face swapping images or the flower garland that shows up on people's heads, or the puppy dog ears and the long tongue that comes wagging out. These are really, really interactive. And the great thing about them is that while they do get used on Snapchat, people can also save them to their camera roll and then turn around and publish them elsewhere. So you'll see them showing up on things like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter as well. Now, Snapchat says the average engagement with lenses is 20 seconds, which again is a reasonable amount of time for someone to spend with a brand. Once again, you can see an example here from Taco Bell where you had the ability to turn your face into basically a taco and move your head around looking like a crunchy taco. But we also see lots of other brands finding creative ways to do it and or to use lenses and to partner with influencers. So for example, the Gatorade Super Bowl filter, partnering with one of the Williams sisters, the tennis star, was used 60 million times and viewed 165 million times. And to put it in perspective, that's more views than the Super Bowl itself got. Now, keep in mind, these can cost upwards of $400,000 to put into place. So again, we're still talking about filters and options and ad options that are really only going to be relevant to certain types of businesses and certain sizes of businesses. You've also got to ask yourself a little bit about whether or not it's even the right fit for you. Taco Bell and Gatorade, they target the Snapchat demographic, and it makes a lot of sense for them to create that world for some engagement. But, the day that I logged in and there was a Morton Salt lens, and I kept thinking to myself, really? Are people really going to buy more name brand salts? Because, they can make themselves look like the Morton Salt girl. And maybe they do. Maybe this is the demographic and the age that is getting their first apartments and starting to buy things for the first time. And this is an opportunity to solidify brand loyalty really early on. There's obviously a lot of possibilities here, but it's also the type of thing where we want to ask ourselves when we look at sustainable social media marketing, is it something that makes a lot of sense? Or is it something that maybe isn't exactly the best fit or use for our time or for our money? A lot of brands are having a lot of fun with lenses and with ad campaigns. But again, they're way beyond the budget for most everybody. Outside of those really targeted geofilter options, the image overlays, it's about testing and tracking what fits your budget and watching to see what lessons are being learned by other brands so that when we do see the prices come down and we see things be more affordable, we have a lot more opportunity to get in here and be ready to go, ready to get in there and play and put our own ideas to work. So really what it all comes down to when we wrap up this whole series on Snapchat is that A, if you're not already acing all of the other top tier channels, and B, if this is not your key demographic, I would really recommend that you continue to keep your eyes open. You continue to learn, read some case studies, see what people are doing, but I recommend that you hold off. For some companies, again, if you're already doing great on all the other channels, if this does fit your demographic, a little bit of light focus is definitely worth testing, getting in, playing around a little bit, following some people, engaging with some brands, running a couple tests. Absolutely. But it's still not a channel that I would recommend going full bore on unless you are one of those small number of really large enterprise companies with really big budgets that very specifically targets the demographic that does really, really well here. So wrapping it all up with our key takeaways. The first one is that the most effective Snapchat campaigns are the ones that leverage the unique features like face swapping and the immediacy of individual snapbacks. Number 2, while Snapchat ads do offer key benefits like A/B testing and remarketing, the price points are still so high that they're out of reach for most companies. Number 3, targeted geo-filters probably offer the single most affordable paid sponsorship option for brands big and small. They're definitely worth taking a look at. Number 4, most of the high engagement ad options on Snapchat are still out of reach for most brands, but that doesn't keep you from watching and learning from what other brands and companies are doing right now. And then finally, if the Snapchat demographic isn't a perfect fit for you, it's more than reasonable to hold off investing in this channel for a little bit.
That's a wrap on our full course. If you have any doubts or questions, you can ask them in the comment section below. Our team of experts will reply you as soon as possible. Thank you and keep learning with Simplilearn.
Staying ahead in your career requires continuous learning and upskilling. Whether you're a student aiming to learn today's top skills or a working professional looking to advance your career, we've got you covered. Explore our impressive catalog of certification programs in cutting-edge domains, including data science, cloud computing, cybersecurity, AI, designed in collaboration with leading universities and top corporations, and delivered by industry. Any of our programs and set yourself on the path to career success. Click the link in the description to know more.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.